Hello, everybody, and welcome to WP Campus pre-conference live streaming. I'm Amber Hines. I'm one of the organizers, and I'm here today with Blake, who is one of our other organizers. He's our lead organizer, but he is also the CEO of Edupack, who is one of the WP Campus sponsors. So, hey, Blake, how are you?
Hey, very good, Amber. How you doing?
Awesome. We were just in our last planning meeting, so it's good to see you again. Can you tell everybody who might not be familiar a little bit about Edupack, what it is?
Yeah, so Edupack is an open source initiative. Basically, we're trying to build the best services for higher ed web publishers. So we're building on top of WordPress, and we're trying to do everything that WordPress doesn't do when managing huge, gigantic microsite networks. So for instance, some of the folks who are working with us have around 16,000 sites, and WordPress network doesn't quite manage all those sites well. A lot of governance pieces fall behind in between the cracks. Accessibility is a big issue. Onboarding is a huge issue. So there's a lot of issues that WordPress just doesn't do out of the box. And what Edupack does is it kind of fills those gaps. So instead of the university having to create their own plugins from scratch, Edupack, with a quick install, has all the different features. And there are 5 main feature tracks that we're focusing on. One of them is self-service. So that means that when a student or any user of the university wants a website, they could spin up a website without having to add a ticket or go through IT. The other one is accessibility. This is a really hot topic right now because a lot of schools are getting sued. So what we're working on, and I should say this is all a work in progress. We have a lot of the features already built, but we're really building it with the community. So accessibility is one of the ones we're building right now actively. And what we're trying to do is enable campuses to have the tools they need to really enforce their own accessibility rules. So instead of saying, oh, it's just contrast or it's just clickability, a school might have readability, or it might have a whole course that users need to go through before they launch their website. So we're putting together the tools that need to govern that with accessibility. Another one is automated archiving. So one of the big wins that we have, and we already have this built and out there right now, and anybody can go to edupack.dev to download it, is automated archiving. And that basically means when a site on a network, so if there's 16,000 sites on this network, every day or every few hours, a site might go down. Or a user might not be using the site anymore. And when those sites become stale, then automatically a user will get an email and says, hey, your site is stale. Do you still want it? Log in if you want it. If you don't, it'll automatically be archived. It's not deleted, but it's archived. And so that automated...
Publicly accessible? Is it no longer publicly accessible then?
Exactly. It's no longer publicly accessible. And it's a huge win for schools that have giant networks, because they are able to see what sites on their network are just not being updated or used anymore. And then they're able to trim away those sites in whatever way they want. So they could download a list of all the archive sites and then delete them all, or they could just move them to a different storage, which ends up saving a lot of money for schools. So that automated archive feature, which is our 3rd feature track, is really one of the key wins. Our 4th feature track out of 5 is brand control. And we see a lot of schools wanting to control their branding standards across these giant networks. And there's not really a centralized way to do that. You might create a theme, but the theme can only do certain things, and a user has certain controls over that theme. So our brand control gives the administrator a full control over the branding of their network. They can change everything from the dashboard to the system emails to the main branding bar. So brand control is our 4th. And then our 5th and final track is kind of the catch-all, which is integrations. And we're constantly trying to figure out what can integrate it. Different management systems like Canvas are a really good piece that we're looking at. But we have a lot of different integrations, and this is kind of where the growth comes. So again, 5 feature tracks is what is the heart of Edupack: self-service, accessibility, brand control, archiving, and then integrations. And that's really what makes Edupack. But I also should say, since I'm giving the pitch right now, is that we're more than just this technology piece. We're a community, and there's a kind of a play on words with Edupack. We really see ourselves like a wolf pack. We want to represent as many higher ed professionals, whether they're vendors or working in the in higher ed institutions, and kind of push website management forward. So every month we have a brain trust event on the third Wednesday of every month to bring people in and to kind of discuss the latest issues. But we can see that just by giving our service for free, we're pushing different hosting companies, even WordPress core, in a direction that benefits higher ed pros. So we really are a pack that is trying to move the needle. And if we're not building it, we want somebody else to build it. And so that's really why we're a community and what we're trying to do moving forward.
And you have a Slack channel, right? So tell us a little bit about that. Who should join? What are some common topics of conversation? Is that where the brain trust happens, or is that like somewhere else, like in a Zoom meeting? Tell us about the community more.
So anybody can join Edupack at edupack.dev. There is just like one filtering thing and just seeing if you have any relationship with higher ed. Folks from government have contacted us, different ad agencies have contacted us, and we really do eventually want to have to support them, but we're focused on higher ed right now. So anybody can join at edupack.dev. And then once they're joined there, we do invite them to Slack. And we kind of see Slack as the main discussion area around our features. So we have different feature channels, those 5 channels I was speaking about. And every month we have an in-person meeting. The brain trust happens totally in person, in Zoom. And as we have basically an hour-long meeting around a topic. And that topic is usually related to one of our features. So for instance, last Wednesday or yesterday, we had a meeting around managing microsites, which really fell into our self-service feature. So we had this great conversation with Dartmouth, with Bill and Adam from Dartmouth about their system in Zoom. And we had a great face-to-face round table with about 13, 14 other higher ed pros. And then what we do is we take that conversation out of Zoom and into Slack. And as we update and change our features, the people in Slack will start to see those changes. So everything is open. So as a developer, we employ several developers. And as the developers are working or the designers are working, they'll actually be talking in Slack. And then higher ed pros can comment on those things. So for instance, one of our Brain Trust members told us what themes they wanted to use, and they wanted us to test those themes against our brand feature. And so we were able to do that all in Slack and test really one-on-one directly for the higher ed pros. So we're really a service for these higher ed pros, and Slack is just a channel that we can have that immediate interaction as we build features.
And is Edupack fully open source?
So we like to say we have an open core, which means the base of what we do, all of those features are completely open and free, and anybody can just download it. But we want to be as open as possible for as long as possible. Now, we also want to employ people to build our open source pieces. So we will eventually have to find ways to monetize or maybe even get sponsorship. We just had a great sponsor that we'll announce at the WP campus. But we're trying to keep things as free and open as possible. Things will always be open, but we'll just try to figure out different ways to monetize. And there are a lot of great open source projects that do find financial ways to keep alive. WordPress being one of them, with Automatic and WordPress.com kind of monetizing a lot of the work. So there will eventually be something like that. I can't say, everything will be free forever and we'll just kind of work as a labor of love forever. But what we are committed to is that our core is open source and our core is free for anybody to download. And the reason we want to do that is because we're trying to make Edupack available to any institution who needs the feature, not just those who can afford it. That's a really big piece. So like community colleges and colleges in the UK, which kind of run as secondary schools, they don't have the budgets that a Harvard or a Dartmouth would have. But they have very similar needs. And we want to make sure that we're as equitable as possible in getting our service out to those schools that need it and can't always afford it. So that's really at the heart of why we're open.
That's really amazing. So if somebody wants to get involved or help contribute to the project, obviously you talked about going to edupack.dev and joining there, but can they find it? It's on GitHub and they can, fork and submit a pull request. Like, how do you handle those kinds of things?
Yeah, so all of our roadmap, we have an open roadmap on GitHub. So it's just our GitHub kind of handle is join Edupack. And if you go to edupack.dev, there'll be a link to it. And that's really the best place to start. The way that we start working with developers is through ticketing. So we have an open kind of ticketing process on GitHub. And if you look on edupack.dev, you'll see a link to our roadmap. And from there, you can see the tickets that are open and start commenting there. Anyone who's interested in actually contributing, once they actually show themselves as like, oh yes, they can be a member of our community, then we will bring them into our repos. We do have a private repository system just so that we can have some semblance of control while we're in this early MVP stage, but anybody's welcome to come and code for us. And we would love to start seeing that. And we have a few folks who have given us their code to include in Edupack, and we definitely love that, and we'll credit people as need be.
Awesome. So how long has Edupack been around? Since you said you're still sort of in MVP mode, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is our month 10 of official Edupack Inc. Development. So we just have 10 months under our belt, and we're hoping to, our goal is by the time we get to month 12, which is in 2 months, November, we will release our beta, which will be everything together. Right now we're in MVP mode. And then, we'll kind of roll it from there. But yes, right now we're in MVP mode. We've just released our 4th version of our MVP. We're targeting 6 versions of our MVP before we go into beta.
Awesome. And can you share any stats on like how many people are using it, or different universities, how many different sites it's installed on?
Yeah, so our brain trust, which is really the stat that we like to look at, because since we're in MVP mode, we have a ton of users, a ton of different people using it, but we're really looking at the people who are engaged in a conversation with Edupack. And right now we have around 68 people from different universities. The majority of them are from institutions in the US and the UK. We have some folks from Africa, from Nigeria in our brain trust who come and go. A lot of people from the UK, as I was saying, just signed up another person from Sweden the other day. We are focusing on English language speakers right now, just because we want to serve everybody and be really intentional as we serve everybody. But so right now we have 68 people who are in there. And every month we have, I would say, about 20 folks join our meetings in a really engaged way, which is really great for us. And some of the institutions that are involved, Dartmouth, Georgetown, University of Connecticut, Harvard, we have a bunch of folks in the UK, Gloucestershire in the UK, Falmouth in the UK. So there's a bunch of folks, Tulane down south here. And then like, as far as like the vendors, we have Pantheon involved. We've been working with Campus Press to make sure our system works with them. Tamin is a really great agency that we've been working with, who really focuses on accessibility. So it's great that we have a huge kind of wide audience of folks who are engaging in the conversation. And our whole work right now is to get as much engaged institutions and individuals in higher ed pushing our conversation forward. And that's where our interest is. When we get to beta, we might start talking about users, but 68 folks from pretty major institutions is a very big win for us right now with our brain trust.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what made you start this?
Well, I've been working in and out of higher ed for the better part of a decade, and the issues kept coming up over and over again every new institution I went to go work with. And those issues were the main tracks around accessibility, brand control, integrations, self-service. And these issues kept reoccurring enough to the point where I kind of was ready to build something. Luckily, Tulane came and said that we want to pay for this building of this great, service that you've been thinking about. So Tulane hired me to build like a early version, and it was super cool, and everybody seemed to enjoy it. And then I did a WP Campus presentation around it, and that brought in a whole bunch of new energy to it. And through that WP Campus presentation, I met with Matt and Nathan of the Smile Agency, and they were just as passionate about solving these problems that I was solving in the first place. And we decided to build a company around it. At first, we didn't quite know where it would go. Should we just monetize it right away? Should we give it to folks? So we just kind of started talking to people. And then Edupack was born. So it's really, and I have to say this, it's not just me as a founding member. Matt and Nathan from Smile have really been kind of the leads, the co-leads. Matt is our CCO, our creative officer, who's focusing on the design and the general kind of usability. Nathan is our CTO, who's really kind of leading a whole development team to work and build out Edupack, and it's a great thing to see. So between us three, we've really decided we're going to give our whole worlds to it. And in December, I just said, you know what, I'm going to do this full time because I believe in higher ed. And this is really kind of a launching pad for, I think, where open source projects can go. I think open source projects should support higher ed, and there should be a knowledge exchange as part of the build out of any project that higher ed is using. So I'm kind of looking at Edupack, if we were going to go on a giant vision, as a proof of concept of how we can build great products for higher ed that are open, that have a free knowledge exchange, and that will hopefully push the entire industry forward and not just kind of focus down one product roadmap. So I'm passionate about it, and I'm now full-time Edupack going forward.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
are you all primarily sponsored now, or
we have a big
for a while?
So we have self-funded ourselves for the last 10 months or 8 months, or 10 months. We've self-funded ourselves for the last 10 months. And now we are starting to get sponsors. We're dipping our toes in sponsorship, and we will announce the big sponsor come WP Campus because the money isn't in the bank yet. But as soon as the money's in the bank and it's real, we'll announce the big sponsor. And that might be a great way forward. And if we can get the sponsorship that allows this project to stay free completely, we of course would love to do that. And hopefully this sponsorship, which is a pretty significant sponsorship, will be kind of the impetus to bring more sponsors on. It takes, we've done, part of the reasons we've done this year of passion, I call it, is to see what it actually would take to build Edupack in the way we want to. And it takes a pretty good deal of resources. I mean, like I said, we have about 5 developers and designers working on this, and they're constantly iterating. So we definitely need to have a robust enough team to keep it supported and keep it going in a way that can push it forward. So we'll try with sponsorship. We'll really try, because it's great giving things away for free and making that kind of leap. So we're going to try that first, and in a few days we'll be announcing that sponsor and that sponsorship. And if anybody's interested, then it can of course go to edupack.dev, join us, and when you click the join button, there's a opt-in if you're interested about sponsorship, and I can get in touch with anybody and talk more about that.
That's so exciting. Also, I totally love how you called it a year of passion, because I feel like that it's just a great way of looking at, having a project that we are exploring and trying to figure out what it can be, but that really piques our interest. So I love that label. And of course, everyone, if you want to know about that and you want to join WP Campus, so you can get your tickets online at 2021.wpcampus.org, and you're going to be speaking, right? So
Yes.
Could you give a little sneak peek on what your talk is going to be about, who you think should attend, like whether it's job title based or skill level, if there's anyone speaking with you?
Yeah. So Matt and Nathan are going to be speaking with me, plus some great guests. We have Bill from Dartmouth, who's one of the admins there. And then we have a few kind of mix mashes of like best of Edupack. Since, this is a pre-recorded video, we kind of went a little bit crazy in our production. So we have it's kind of like a variety show. And what we really want to focus on is managing microsite networks. This is something that we've learned a lot about in our last year of passion, and have really kind of figured out how different universities all over the world do it. So everything from accessibility to how they manage their brand, we're going to bring the key points into our presentation, talk about those, and then bring in people who are actually doing it. So like I said, Bill from Dartmouth gives a WordPress site to every single user. We're going to interview him and talk about some of the key things that they've learned. Yi, another Brain Trust member from UConn, had a great kind of analogy that she gave about managing accessibility during one of our Brain Trusts. We're going to do a clip from that. And then we have a few other special guests to talk about every little aspect that you can talk about in 40 minutes around managing huge networks of microsites. So hopefully folks who are kind of maybe starting up or have their own kind of microsite network would get interested. Anyone who's a system administrator should definitely be there. Folks that are really interested in digital literacy, which is a new topic that we're really kind of driving towards, which is turning WordPress into a learning tool and making that sell to executives in the university that, hey, WordPress is actually something you need on your CV, like you would need Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel. We kind of speak to that as well. So again, anyone who is into managing these microsites, governing the microsites, or finding the academic advantages of having microsites should probably check out our presentation.
And when you're talking about microsites, are you specifically talking about like WordPress multi-site setup, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. I mean, yes, that is the way that the majority of people have been managing microsites. And I would say that's the way 90% or so of folks have been managing sites. What we're talking about is sites on a network that are not the main site. So for instance, if a department has its own website, that would be a microsite. If a lab has its own site, that would be a microsite. Student blog, all these different kind of auxiliary things. We find that these microsites, the sites that are not the main kind of hallmark site of the institution, harvard.edu, not that main site, but every site underneath there, has a different way of managing and governing. And the reason why these are microsites and they have a different way of managing and governing is because they are largely run by a user outside of a communications department. So that means that the typical kind of branding standards and all the standards that the communications department sets and makes sure is on the main website, they don't have that same control with these microsites. So that's why we really see our advantage as controlling and making sure that these microsites are in line with those standards that the main site is in line with. And they have a unique, they require a unique skill set that the main site probably won't need.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. So that session is on Tuesday at, I see things in Central Time Zone, so 2 p.m. Central. 1 p.m. Eastern, I think, is on the schedule. So I want to switch gears just a little bit because you are our head organizer this year for the conference. What are some other sessions that you're looking forward to or that you want to tease a little bit for people?
There are so many great sessions. I mean, I think that like what really gets me excited every time I go to a WP campus is the sessions around accessibility, since WP campus has kind of led on accessibility for so long. It seems like it's pretty much the go-to place for accessibility. So anything that is talking around accessibility, I think I was also watching a lot of the sessions the other day, but I noticed that like the conversation around accessibility is going more from the technology to the actual humans, and how can we train behaviors and what can we do, whether it's readability or translatability. So I'm super interested in all the accessibility videos coming out. I also like looking at the other sponsor videos. I mean, the other hosting companies, they're always really unique. And I know Campus Press and Pantheon both have they use these chances to introduce new features and the new pieces that they're working on. And as someone building a platform that relies on hosts, Edupack is definitely not a host, and we just want to support the hosts. I definitely will tune in to the stuff that Campus Press and Pantheon specifically are developing, and every other host. I know Miriam Schwab is also going to be giving a presentation on, she focuses on headless WordPress. That's really cool. I don't know anything about it. Very curious to hear about it. So would be cool to do that. Anne McCarty of Automatic is going to give a full site editing a presentation, and full site editing is a project that I've been really involved in and love what Anne is doing, and can't be more of a proponent for full site editing. So I highly encourage.
Even within the importance of governance and keeping things on brand, I'll say I'm looking forward to that talk, because we keep talking about we need to dive more into full site editing, but we've literally been avoiding it, because I just keep thinking with our higher ed or our enterprise clients, how do we do full site editing and stop them from making their whole navigation look funky, or something like that?
Well, I'm passionate in the way that I'm passionate about natural disasters. I mean, I think that
it's fascinating, but terrifying at the same time.
Exactly. There's a nature to the WordPress world, and things will change, things will evolve, things will move. And I mean, I'm in New Orleans, so natural disasters are really on my head, and I'm seeing the way the city is evolving. And, we didn't have, in my analogy is we didn't have walls to protect us against this hurricane that just blew through 20 years ago. Post Katrina, that was a terrible, terrible learning experience for the city. And we built these great walls. We've kind of tuned our city, and then the electricity goes away. So now we have to build our electricity better. When full site editing comes like the storm it will, and angers a lot of people like it has, the real goal that I think anybody who uses WordPress or administers WordPress should have is let's deal with it, and also let's try to influence it to the way that we want to. WordPress is an open source project. So my thing is, I will be optimistic, I will push things forward, but I'll also be critical, and I'll lend my opinion. And that's really what gives me the excitement about full site editing, because a lot of the things that I've created tickets for on GitHub have been solved. And that means that someone is listening, but also someone is building this giant open source project towards my desires. And towards the things I think are important. And I think the more people who get involved in that way, the more we will have a system that works better for us. It might not be 80% there, it might not be 60% there, but at least it will be a net positive. And so I'm really hoping, and I think that anybody listening or anybody who attends WP Campus should go to Anne's talk to figure out how to get involved with this project. And in doing so, how to influence WordPress towards the vision that they have. And also knowing how to report problems is a really big piece to pushing WordPress forward. And it's getting a lot easier. And a lot of the work that Anne is doing is making that engagement easier. And so WordPress becomes the city that if you say we need this fixed, it'll hopefully get fixed. They have a lot of resources now. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm like one of those passionate optimists about most things that people are like scared and pessimistic about, because the passionate optimist is the one who like seems to be pushing things forward in the end.
Yeah. I mean, we dove head first or feet first, I don't know, one of the two, into Gutenberg, right?
Mhm.
Like we're going to build with blocks as soon as the block editor was out in core. And there and sometimes there still are frustrations, but there's also moments when I'm like, you know what? I never have to explain to a client how to use a column class short code to put their content into columns. So I think it's the same thing with full site editing. There'll be frustrations, but there'll also be, I think, immediate improvements that we'll be glad for. So
definitely, I 100% think so. Frustrations and improvements, and hopefully the frustrations can be mitigated by posting, a critical blog post or getting your frustration out there. It shouldn't just be suffered alone.
Yeah. So let's see. I think we've talked a little bit about what we're looking at. You've given us a sneak peek of your session. Is there anything else that you think would be interesting for people to know before we remind them to go get their free tickets? Maybe I'll remind them right now at 2021.word, wpcampus.org. Sorry about that. Anything else that's front of mind for you?
I mean, the big thing that I'll say with higher ed pros that I just want to like constantly push is that it should be a collaborative environment. It should be an open environment. So, anyone who's listening and has never spoken up on a Slack channel or has kind of made their opinion understood is not only doing disservice to themselves, they're doing disservice to the entire higher ed industry. And you should get your opinion out there and your voice out there. And I think that WP Campus specifically is a really safe environment to getting kind of testing your waters with a community. And so I would highly, highly encourage anyone to start into WP Campus, dip their toes in that water. Just anything you find cool or anything that's out there. It's how we started to build this Edupack, and it really, like, working with the WP Campus community has led into working for a full year on a passion project for me personally. And I would hope that anybody inside or outside of higher ed really gets involved with the WP Campus community and pushes their voice forward, and then pushes the entire higher ed community forward and pushes it more open as they go throughout their kind of conversation.
Yeah, and the best way to join the Slack is probably via the website, wpcampus.org. There's links over to the Slack. So I know I love participating in there. I maybe lurk a little more than I chat, but it is definitely, there's tons of great conversations happening all the time. So
yeah,
so
whenever anyone is, what's that?
Oh, go ahead.
I was saying also, if anybody can email me at blake@edupack.dev for anything, blake@edupack.dev, or visit edupack.dev.
That's what I was just about to ask you. Where can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more? So you answered my question. Well, this has been super fun. I really appreciate you coming live with me and chatting a little bit about Edupack, and hopefully everybody will go grab their tickets so that they can learn more about microsite management next week.
Thanks.